Ryan Pace pretty much came out in his press conference and said that he wants to keep Allen Robinson. Allen Robinson's a good player. He wants to keep good players. And Ian Rappaport was reporting as well that he expects the Chicago Bears to tag Allen Robinson. Now, Robinson is currently looking for a contract over $20 million a year. We can get into whether or not he's worth that right now. I think there is some questions regarding Robinson that a lot of Bears fans don't want to bring up. Like, hey, how did you manage to get 3 balls ripped out of your hands for interceptions this past year? But we don't need to get into that.
Just a little shade,
yeah, yeah. I mean, but Robinson, he's been liking also a lot of posts relating to, what he would do if he's tagged, saying that or essentially liking posts signifying that Allen Robinson could get tagged and traded to the Jets or something like that. And he pretty much has made the sentiment known that, hey, if he comes back to the Bears and they work out a long-term deal, he'll be happy to return. Yet, at the same time, if it's on the franchise tag, it doesn't seem like he's going to play on that. It seems like he is pretty, in my eyes at least, he's pretty lockstep in the thought that he will not play on this franchise tag, and he may, in fact, demand a trade if given the opportunity.
Yeah, everything's pretty lockstep here. I think that, anyone that read the language of the press conference with Ryan Pace will see that, he basically said everything he could that Allen Robinson is going to get tagged without saying that Allen Robinson is going to get tagged. I mean, it was very leading language to that point. And it looks like Allen Robinson, he's standing pretty firm that, he's not necessarily going to be happy about that and hasn't said that he's going to hold out, but, isn't bothered with the possibility of getting traded on the tag. Like you said, the Jets, I know specifically he liked, something with them. I think this is a couple of times that he's done that with the Jets. Or he's just going to hold out,
Imagine the world when a player wants to go to the Jets.
I know they're kind of technically could be building a new thing, but it does seem very odd to me that, you'd want to, if you'd want to step up from where you are, the Jets aren't really quite that team. I think that it definitely just seems like the tag and trade seems like a very likely thing in my mind at this point. I would be shocked if he doesn't end up getting tagged and then traded. And I know one thing I saw was, does he go to the Jets on a tag and trade and the Bears get Darnold back? Personally, I'd like to see more than just that. I think that would be technically an overpay, even though he is just on the tag and they'd probably have to sign him to a bigger contract. We could get into that at a different time, but there's some options, if they do end up tagging and trading him, which I think is likely. I mean, there's definitely going to be a lot of, interested teams. And another interesting statement he made is that, 31 other teams would give him, this kind of contract. It's just not the Bears that aren't.
All right, guys, really quickly before we continue with the show, we have to let you know that this podcast is supported by Manscaped, who is the best in men's below-the-waist grooming. Manscaped offers precision-engineered tools for your family jewels, and they obsess over their technology developments. They're trusted by over 2 million men worldwide, and we have an exclusive offer code for our listeners, 20% off plus free shipping using code BEARNECESSITIES, no space, at manscaped.com. Manscaped sent both Reese and I over a bunch of their tools and formulations from their Perfect Package 3.0. And guys, Manscaped is a great company. They wanted us to wait until we try the products to give you guys our honest opinion. And it is a very good product. They have no-nick technology and a little LED light, which helps you get the job done a little bit easier. Both Reese and I have really enjoyed the Lawnmower 3.0 so far, and we're looking forward to trying a lot of their other products. The underwear that they sent us in the box too has been spectacular, and if you guys are into athletics or go to the gym frequently, highly recommend those as well. And guys, really quickly, if you use the same razor on your face as below the waist, guys, that's a little bit nasty. Try to pick up something specifically engineered for that below the waist region with the Lawnmower 3.0. Get 20% off and free shipping with the code BEARNECESSITIES at manscaped.com. That's 20% off and free shipping using code BEARNECESSITIES at manscaped.com. Make sure you check how to spell that in the description. That's going to support the podcast tremendously. Unlock your confidence and always use the right tools for the job with Manscaped.
Yeah, and here's the thing is I don't necessarily even know that that's true. Truthfully, I don't know if... I don't believe the perception of Allen Robinson in the NFL is as good as fans make it out to be. I mean, we have to think that he's switched teams twice. He could be switching teams twice, and typically players like that, there's a reason why they switch. Now we know Allen Robinson off the field is a really good dude. Says he's very people in the Bears organization say that he's very meticulous in the way that he studies the game, prepares for games. He's a good mentor for young players. But at the same time, it's kind of one of those things where you can't really point to the reason why, but the fact that he switched teams a couple times kind of makes you wonder if, like, schematically teams just don't view him as much of an asset as other players. I do still like Allen Robinson, and I hope that he stays around as a Bears player. But if we can trade him, and if we can get like a first round pick, which some people are saying is a possibility, I'm down for that. I'm down for getting a first round pick for Allen Robinson.
Yeah, because I just don't think the Bears are going to sign him to a bigger deal. So it's kind of just like you're going to get the best of what you're going to get back. Mm-hmm. And, if it ended up being that first round grade, then, that's fine. And looking back at Allen Robinson's career, I mean, I'm not really saying that he's fallen off or anything. Of course he hasn't. I think he's still playing, probably some of the best football of his career. But it's really odd that when you look at the numbers, he had better seasons prior to the injury in Jacksonville with Blake Bortles as quarterback. Mm-hmm. That's when he still put up his best numbers. And I know a lot of people like to argue that, it's Trubisky that's held him back. That's why he doesn't look like this dominant, receiver, why he doesn't put up, even gaudier stats, even though he puts up really good numbers, and it's like, well, I know Blake Bortles was like decent for like kind of like a year, but still it was Blake Bortles. Mm-hmm. That was no great quarterback, and he was putting up better numbers with him. So it's just kind of interesting if you look at the kind of the way his career has been trending.
And what we saw with Allen Robinson is that he primarily served the RPO role, where he would go like 10 yards on an in route and get that easy completion depending on which way the linebacker would go. So you kind of wonder, I would really like to see some advanced stats on how much of his production was made off of things like that, where it's almost like anybody can almost play that, like so many receivers can do that. And, I like Allen Robinson. I think that best case scenario, the Bears can get him on a deal that is worth his value. But when I look at like $22 million a year, I just don't know if to me personally, it does not make sense to sign a player to that long-term extension worth that much. That's, by the way, how much Khalil Mack is getting paid. I just don't know if it makes sense to sign a player to that contract when at the same time the offense has been so terrible every single year. And he has been somewhat of a bright spot, but I more view him as a player that's like Mr. Reliable. Like, you can make, like, he's going to be there when you need him. He's going to, kind of just be that guy that if you throw it to him, you can count on him for catching it. He has some really good hands. At times when it doesn't come to getting the ball ripped out of them for an interception. I like Robinson, but honestly, if the Bears could get like a first round pick in return and they could like package that to either move up for a new quarterback or trade for a quarterback, that seems like a pretty good situation to me.
I mean, if you end up with a pick on a tag and trade that's in the first round, and damn, even if they end up getting, a tackle, I'd be happy. If you end up with something that's going to improve this team, bottom line is right now, for this Bears team in their current cap situation, it does not make sense to sign Robinson to that big of a deal because it's just going to hurt the team long term. They simply can't afford it right now. They can't, as much as it would be great. It'd be great if the Bears could keep Allen Robinson around, especially with the prospect of bringing in a new quarterback. I get that. To have that solid weapon there is good. And you want, this Bears team is looking to contend next year anyway, so they'd want to keep Allen Robinson on. But the thing is, it's just the numbers, they're just not going to, it just doesn't work for this team right now in their current situation.
They need flexibility, and flexibility needs to be emphasized above all, especially when it comes to people potentially looking at trading for a quarterback and stuff like that, where there's these massive cap hits that could be incurred by the team. So I think that the tag for now makes sense, even if you keep him around for a little bit, just to kind of make sure he doesn't hit free agency. And then once you figure out your quarterback, you make your decision then, which is what I think the Bears are trying to do, truthfully. I think that's why they haven't had contract negotiations with him, is because they understand that the very first and foremost thing that they need to do is figure out this quarterback situation before they can even think about extending a receiver to a $20 million a year contract, which makes perfect sense. So I think Allen Robinson, once the quarterback is figured out, might potentially find himself in contract negotiations with the Bears again for a long-term deal. But for right now, it doesn't make a whole bunch of sense for the Bears to shell out that $20 million contract if they have no clue who's going to be throwing to him.
Yeah. No, I mean, it makes sense. And yeah, I mean, it's a circumstance based off of the pickle that the Bears organization put themselves in. And, this is really kind of the only way they can handle it, is by being very ambiguous and by being quiet and icing out their star receiver.